And welcome everyone to Sports Shorts Daily. Ronnie Rants alongside Tommy Christ and TK joining us from over at Tremonti's Meat and Seafood in Baton Rouge on this Friday morning edition. Today, talking a little bit about, of course, last night. Tommy was a winner. He took the Pelicans plus 5.5. They lost by 5, so cashed that winning ticket for TK. Pels have been, that's been a tale, Tommy, of hot and cold this year. Number one team in the conference at one point in the fall, number one in the West. Now they're look like a team that's going to be battling just to get to the play-in game this season. Don't know really what's going on with them, but clearly they have the ability to turn it around. We saw them do well, of course, at the beginning part of the year. Also, LSU women, another win for Kim Mulkey's squad. They've got their last home game this Sunday against Mississippi State in the PMAC in the afternoon. Tommy is a guy who's getting tickets for a good sponsor, the Baton Rouge Rougarou. This game is a hardcore sellout. It's going to be a giant crowd. It's the last home game for the regular season. They're going to be hosting the tournament, I would say. Are they hosting a regional? I don't know how they do that.
If we'll have to. Well, they're a number 2 seed. That was announced by the NCAA last night.
You know what? I would assume that they're hosting an NCAA tournament. I don't know if they do it like the men, where they predetermine the sites, or if there's a part of it that is okay. Well, if you're a top, 8 seed, you're going, or like they do in baseball, where the top 16 seeds host. You have to look into that. I would assume women's basketball hasn't grown to the point where they have the first 2 rounds like that it goes by like baseball, where the top 16 seeds host. But anyway, we'll look into it and see.
Right, we got breaking news here. The over and under is 4.5 on birdies made by you today. I'm just saying, it's a question from a viewer.
If there's ever an over under on birdies made and it's 4.5, take the under. Okay, for sure, for sure. I don't think I've ever had more than maybe 2 birdies in a round in my life, Tommy.
Okay.
I think I might have had 2, but maybe 3, but that would be the most I've ever had. So definitely 4.5. And by the way, I wish I was playing golf. I'm not, but definitely take the under on the 4.5 for sure on that one. All right, so we've got obviously the women are rolling along. The men got a win. Got a big win. So now LSU is 5-14-1. 5-14-1 against the spread in their last 20 basketball games. They got their second victory of the year. It was pretty impressive in that regard. Also today, you got LSU Baseball is going to be playing at 2 o'clock against Kansas State over in Round Rock in a big tournament this weekend over there. Tell you a little bit about Kansas State, their opponent, Tommy. Their head coach, Hal Hughes' dad, former LSU Tiger infielder, Hal Hughes, of course, transferred to Rice last year. His dad is the head coach at Kansas State in his 5th year. Kansas State started off the season 4-0, had 4 wins at Stephen F. Austin last weekend, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday series. Big 12 team knocking off a Southland Conference team, not that big of a deal, but on the road, got all 4 victories. Looked like they were maybe going to win against Lamar, Will Davis's squad, on midweek, but Lamar came from behind and won that game. So anyway, that said, I would say that the LSU Tigers taking on Kansas State, going to be a heavy favorite, of course, every game that they play. And this is a Kansas State team that put up a lot of offense over the weekend. So we'll see how it goes today, but the game that everyone's eyeballing is not Kansas State. It's not Iowa. It's not
Sam Houston.
Sam Houston on Sunday. It's Texas on Tuesday at Texas. And you think, midweek games are not necessarily that big of a deal, Tommy. But this one early on, you're going to see a lot of frontline pitching for both teams early on. This isn't a midweek game in April where you got conference on the weekends and then, you're trying to throw off and you definitely don't want to burn anybody out. This is an early season midweek game. So you can be testing a few players. Whatever pitchers you have available that are the high-end pitchers that didn't get burned out over the weekend, they will throw on Tuesday against University of Texas and vice versa. So, and by the way, speaking of Texas, David Pierce's squad, the former Tulane head coach, They lost all 3 games they played this past weekend. Now, they were against very good opponents, the Vanderbilts, the Arkansas of the world, but they lost all 3 games that they played this past weekend. So they're going to have a little bitter taste in their mouth going against LSU.
Well, of course, they're coming into the SEC on July 1 of 2024. So, this is going to start the fire on that, LSU versus Texas stuff in baseball and other sports, obviously.
Speaking of Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference in 2024, I know you've got some information from some, pretty good things you're hearing behind the scenes about what that realignment may look like. And it may not be what people think, right? People are thinking east and west. They're thinking quadrants, 4 team pools. But what are you hearing?
Well, I got some good information. This is SEC football. Not going to wait till May with the spring meetings in Destin. They could announce it before that. When Texas and Oklahoma join July 1, 2024, there'll be no more West and East division. This year it'll be there. Won't be any more after that. And then there'll be no divisions. And then they're going to go to a 9-game SEC schedule. And the top 2 teams based on winning percentage will go to Atlanta to play for the SEC championship. No East, no West, and they're going to go to a 9-game schedule, SEC games, and then a 3-6-3 format where you're going to have 3 permanent opponents for every SEC team. That's somebody they're going to play every year. There'll be 3 of those, home and away, obviously, and then the rest of it will rotate. So LSU fans will get to see every team in the conference at least once every 4 years. The old argument, LSU never played Georgia when they had Herschel Walker, never played Tennessee when Peyton Manning was there. And, they don't want to have that happen anymore. So that's what you can look for, an announcement coming prior to the spring meetings in May. Come 2024, no West, no East, just one big old standings of 16 teams. Best 2 winning percentages go to Atlanta.
I got to be honest, I like the idea of the 1 through 16. Okay, I like that idea. And there's no East, there's no West, there's no quads. But Tommy, if you go with 3 permanent opponents, then that's kind of like a mini quad. To be honest with you, I mean, it's a 3-team quad versus a 4-team quad. Okay, so it's 1 less permanent opponent. And then the issue is going to be who are your 3? And it's not going to be equal, right? That there's going to be certain teams that have an easy 3 versus another. And so I don't know that there's a whole lot of difference in this system. The quads kind of makes it feel like an NFC type thing, like the NFC South and the West and all that, where you have 4 teams, and that I think people can wrap their heads around that a little bit easier. And to me, the quads you could do in all sports. You play all your teams 3 times, and and then you just rotate everybody else. But I like the idea of having maybe like a semifinal and a final type of thing. The winner of each quad plays each other, and whatever sport, right? But to me, it's just a different way of calling it that. Going with the 3 permanent opponents, and then we would assume that the 3 permanent opponents would be Texas and Texas A&M, and then the 3rd opponent is the to be determined just by geography.
Yeah, it could be Ole Miss. We have to wait and see on that. Now, Ronnie, one thing I'm not sure of is that I know that's going to be football. That's what they're saying. It's going to be just one. Now, I don't know if the other sports are going to go to a West and an East. I don't know all of that because you got, lots of other sports, and not just basketball, baseball, but you got tennis, you got golf. I mean, there's lots of stuff out there. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But look for that to be what the SEC football announces here in the coming months.
Yeah, it's much like in high school, right, where the different districts get a chance to determine how they determine a champion. It's much like that in baseball and basketball. The different sports have the ability. Obviously basketball doesn't do an East and a West, but football and baseball do. And so and obviously in baseball it's different because you have 10 series versus in football you have 8. But the biggest note that you mentioned, Tommy, is that they're going to eventually play 9 conference games. 9 conference games, which also tells me that those 3 non-conference games, assuming they all stay with 12 regular season games, are going to probably be hot garbage.
Yeah, they're going to be paycheck games. Some of the mid-majors and other schools are going to get that paycheck. LSU's bounced around the state of Louisiana with the other in-state schools. So Gonna be interesting to see, but you're right. You're not going to have that like LSU Florida State thing, what you'll have this year in Orlando in September, or other matchups that have occurred over the years like that. They're going to go away, except maybe one every now and then. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what they do. Obviously, we know they've got long-term contracts in place with some schools. It's supposed to be playing a home and home with USC and UCLA. It's got one more and others. Clemson, a home and home with Clemson. I would hope that those games don't go away, but I don't. But I think it's a conversation, right? Because LSU doesn't want to be in a situation where, hey, they go play 9 regular season, SEC games, and they lose a tight one to Clemson on the road or something, or at home, doesn't matter, and it affects them getting into the playoffs, or it affects them having a home playoff game or not, versus say in Alabama, who goes with 3 paycheck games and and has the same conference record.
Well, it might matter too. Now, if they go to 12 teams in the playoffs, you could have that 10th game against the Florida State or the Clemson or somebody like that. And if you lost it, it may not hurt you as bad, as you would now when you only got, 4 teams in the playoffs. So lot of things to unfold as that goes forward.
I would think that regardless of what system you have, a loss is going to hurt you, right? And it may not hurt you from a standpoint of being in the playoffs or out of the playoffs, but it may hurt you from a standpoint of hosting a playoff game, which makes you millions of dollars. It may host you from a standpoint of getting a bye, which gets you a better chance of getting into the championship and winning a national title. So it's going to hurt you in some way. It's just a matter of what that way is. And so it's just, it just almost seems like you have to have some writing as a conference to where one of your 3 non-conference games has to come against another Power 5 school. Like,
Right.
I would love some language like that would say, hey, look, everybody has to schedule one of your 3 games against a Power 5 school. Now, granted, you can pick a lower tier Power 5 school. Doesn't always have to be the national championship contender, but still that levels the playing field a little bit. If it's just, 3 Southland Conference schools or something like that, and all you got to do is try to go 8-1 and you're 9, and then work. It's just not fair. And then you get into a whole debate. It doesn't matter how many teams are in the playoffs.
Well, there'll be plenty of conversation, no question.
All right, so LSU baseball. What are you looking forward to seeing this weekend the most, based off of the first 4 games?
A couple things. I want to see Paul Skeens going to throw today at 2:00. I want to see if he can follow up his brilliant first outing. Also, does Tommy Tanks get into the lineup as a DH or not? Also, I'm a box score nut. Can they keep playing error-free baseball? I think that'll be something to watch for. And then, what else happens in the lineup? You can't take Dugas out. He's given the coach reason not to take him out. He's on fire, and see if he can keep it up. What does Trey Morgan do after hitting for the cycle? I mean, there's lots of stories and some different guys that'll play who'll catch the whole weekend, 3-day games. Lot to take in with LSU baseball, and I'm looking forward to it.
Tommy Tanks is a big story, right? Because, I mean, there's 2 parts to this. One, I'm disappointed that Skeens hasn't had an at-bat this year.
Well, did you hear what happened? Jay Johnson has said he's changed his body into a pitching body, and he may not hit much at all. Okay. Now, I saw him hit rockets in the fall. When I say rockets, I'm talking rockets. Okay. Oppo, line drive Oppo into they hit where your seats are, a line drive. So Jay Johnson, I mean, I don't know, man. It's just.
Look, Jay, just come out and say, hey, his agent doesn't want him to hit, right?
That's what he don't want to get hit in the fingers or whatever,
he's going to be a top 10 draft pick.
Top 5 draft choice. Yeah.
And his agent doesn't want him to get hurt. And that's what this is all about. I mean, look, the kid is one of the best hitters on the team. He'd make a difference in their lineup. To me, that BS about his body type, my God. What is Tommy Tanks' excuse? What's his body type?
Riley Cooper. Yeah, Riley Cooper and Tommy Tanks have the jumbo TK look.
we care about Skeens' body, but we clearly don't care about some others. But anyway, I mean, like that reminds me of the Paul Maneri line when they didn't have any left-handed pitchers one year on the team, and he said, we don't have any lefties, but we've got some right-handers. One's got the short breaking ball that's really of a slower change that, and then the other is a back foot. It's kind of like a left-handed breaking ball because it's deeper, I mean, it was just like, come on, man.
Ronnie, Stephen Miller chimes in that Doug Thompson, old Doug, talked to Jay Johnson, and Jay squashed the idea of hitting Skeens this year.
Yeah, and that's
I'd heard that last week when I was out there, but hey.
I mean, there's a guy who's literally the best player in baseball who does both. Like, you know what I mean? Like those days of putting a bubble around the baseball pitchers, which is over. Like, you literally have the greatest player in the league is a two-way guy, starting pitcher and a DH. Paul Skeens has the ability to be that guy. At least at the college level, he can be an MVP level type player in the SEC. And we're going to bubble wrap him. I
agree with. Hey, I agree with you.
Problem with that.
Now, keep in mind, this team's got a lot of talent, and a lot of depth right now.
They don't have 9 batters better than Paul Skeens. That's
my point. You got to put the best 9, 10, however you want to word it, out there, especially when you get to SEC play. Okay, I mean, that's big. So we'll see how Jay Johnson and his staff handles that.
Tommy Tanks, is a big story because, and look, go back to this too. When LSU was preseason #1 in the country, it was based off of Tanks being in the lineup, Skeens being in the lineup. You take those two guys off this team, are they in a unanimous first, #1 team in the country preseason? If they don't have Tanks and Skeens in their lineup, I mean, offensively, I'm talking. I don't know. If you don't have Tanks on the team and you don't have Skeens hitting, there might be, look, they're not going to fall to 5, but they might not be unanimous #1. My point is that this team that everybody thought was going to win a national championship is based on those two guys being a lineup. We now know Skeens is never going to hit this year. Now we know Tanks has multiple separate, pop outs, shoulder pop outs, which K. Doty had, and he had to wear a brace and all this thing. We hadn't seen Tanks for 4 games. Is this going to be an issue? Are they going to have to put bubble wrap around him, and he can only DH, and he's not going to play third? And so there's some hiccups here. Hurd on Tuesday didn't look like a freshman All-American. The transfer from UCLA. So there's some things, not the panic button things, but there's things to keep an eye on. Relative to winning a national championship, being the best team in the country. That said, nobody saw Tennessee having their struggles. Nobody saw Vanderbilt having their struggles over the weekend. Those were big surprises.
Got a question. Ronnie, have you seen the left and right-handed pitcher for Mississippi State?
Yes.
Gerangelo Sinte.
An ambidextrous pitcher, and not only a gimmick, a real deal ambidextrous.
He's throwing 98 right-handed, 92 left-handed. Now, Ronnie, I played Dixie Youth baseball with a guy that threw with both arms. He was very good. He ended up pitching for the Raging Cajuns for 4 years, but all left-handed after he got out of Little League. But I remember if he was struggling, the coach would bring his other glove to him out, and he'd switch from left to right, seriously. And he was very, very good. Lauren Landreneau pitched for the Raging Cajuns. He's 1 year younger than me.
Yeah, anyway. I played against a guy when I was 17 or 18 out in Arizona. I think he was from Michigan. Played against him, who's an ambidextrous pitcher. He threw parts of a doubleheader from both sides. And then I think in college there was a guy, I don't know if it was summer league or whatever. I feel like I played against another guy. It's an incredible feat. And of course there's a glove now that's made you can use for lefties and righties.
But a guy for the Oakland A's does that. There's a guy for the Oakland A's that throws with both arms.
Yeah. It's an incredible deal.
Most people can't throw with one arm. These guys are throwing with 2. But Mississippi State, they can't beat anybody. So they might need more than just him.
I mean, literally throwing strikes with 2 hands is –
and throwing in the 90s with both hands.
It's absolutely incredible. Kermit Davis, former LSU assistant, gets fired as the head coach at Ole Miss basketball. And just so happens LSU's playing at Ole Miss on Saturday. But I don't know. Maybe Kermit comes back as an assistant one day at LSU. Who knows? Did a great job when he was here before, a beloved figure. But, hey, win or go home. Ole Miss is having a terrible season, much like LSU. Of course, LSU got their second win, ended, a 13-14 game?
14-game losing streak.
Wow. Yeah. We'll see. I'm going to stay with the plan of betting against LSU on the road at Ole Miss. Now I'm going with win one for the Gipper. They got rid of the coach. Usually that next game, there's some juice, there's some momentum for the interim or something, type of deal. So we'll see. Ole Miss at home. LSU played probably its best game of the year against South Carolina in the PMAC. Had one of their players go for 35, I believe it was.
Williams did it. KJ Williams had a brilliant night.
Unbelievable night. And I mean, it took that kind of effort to beat a team that won 2 games all year. And I'm banking on the fact that Williams isn't going to have another 35-point game at Ole Miss.
No, I don't think he will. Hey, Ronnie, keep in mind, too, spring training games start in Major League Baseball today out in Arizona, down in Florida. I've been watching the MLB Network TV channel all week with all the previews. I'm looking forward to that. And I got other breaking news for you, Ronnie.
What you got?
I'm getting ready to do the Netflix thing.
Amen.
Well, you know what got me? I put on Jordy Collada this morning.
And they were talking.
He was talking about the Full Swing feature on Netflix, how great it was. Yeah. And so I went to Netflix.com and all. So I'm very close, Ryan, very close.
I'll make sure in the future I go to Jordy Collada on things that you need to do to improve your life. Since clearly you'll take his advice.
It's your advice. I'm doing this because of you.
Right. No, Full Swing. And look, also Formula One came out.
Yeah, I know. I got a lot to watch.
You got a lot of binging to do. Outer Banks came out yesterday. That's another good one. So you got some homework. Tell us about Tremonti.
All right. Well, first off, we got Sports Shorts Radio tomorrow, 10 to 12 on 104.5 ESPN. I'll be on the phone at 11 o'clock working the USSSA tournament out at Live Oak tomorrow this weekend. So I'll be handling that. So don't forget the radio. Then Monday, we're back at Court Street Cafe Monday morning for Sports Shorts Daily. Also, Tremonti's, all your crawfish, live crawfish, boiled crawfish, lint. They got all the seafood you need, fried catfish with etouffee on it for lunch today. Get your shacks of crawfish live and boiled. A lot of orders are already in for the weekend. Tremonti's Meat and Seafood. Go to tremontis.com or call the phone number on the screen. Live crawfish, boiled crawfish. They'll have them ready at 3 o'clock today if you want to come by and get 10 pounds to go. You want to sit in here and eat a few pounds. Tremonti's Meat and Seafood got it going on.
For Tommy Christ and I'm Ronnie Rance, we'll check you out tomorrow morning on Sports Shorts Radio on 104.5 ESPN at 10 a.m. Have a great Friday, everybody.